bonds in your own currency. What happens to the currency is it can be a question, because you don't default. The United States has been smart enough, and people have trusted us enough to issue its debt in its own currency. And Argentina is now having a problem because the debt isn't in their own currency, and lots of countries have had that problem, and lots of countries will have that problem in the future. It is very painful to owe money in somebody else's currency. But listen, if I could issue a currency, Buffett bucks, and I had a printing press, and I could borrow money in that, I would never default. So what you end up getting in terms of purchasing power can be in doubt. But in terms of the U.S. government, when Standard & Poor's downgraded the United States government, I think it was Standard & Poor's some years back, that to me did not make sense. I mean, in the end, how you can regard any corporation as stronger than a person who can print the money to pay you, I just don't understand. So don't worry about the government defaulting. I think it's kind of crazy, incidentally, this should be said, to have these limits on the debt and all of that sort of thing, and then stop the government arguing about whether it's going to increase the limits. We're going to increase the limits on the debt. The debt isn't going to be paid. It's going to be refunded. And anybody that thinks they're going to bring down the national debt, I mean, there's been brief periods, and I think it's the late 90s or thereabouts, when the debt's come down a little bit. The country's going to print more debt. The country's going to grow in terms of its debt-paying capacity. But the trick is to keep borrowing in your own currency. Here's an interesting figure that probably will astound you. The Federal Reserve every Thursday puts out a balance sheet. Well, there were 800 billion, go back 10 or 15 years, there was about 800 billion of currency in circulation. And if you look at last Thursday's report, you'll see there's something like now $2.2 trillion of currency in circulation. 2.2 trillion. There's 330 million people in the United States. Let's look at it that way. And with 330 million people, and you have almost 2.3 trillion of currency in circulation, that's $7,000 per person. Every man, woman, and child, in theory, that's $7,000 worth of currency. Well, that isn't right, but you do know that the Federal Reserve's bookkeeping is essentially right. They've got that much that's out there. It's a staggering sum. It affects prices. It has to affect prices. In terms of inflation in our own businesses, it's extraordinary how much we've seen. I think you interviewed Herb Lumpkin at the Furniture Mart, and for 2 years, the prices have just kept coming in higher for these things, and we sell them for higher prices, and people have more money than they've had before. Inflation is never the same. Nothing in economics is the same the second time after it happens than the first, because the first affects people's attitudes, and the second, their attitudes always influence the activity itself. I mean, it is an interesting phenomenon. Anyway, we have sent out lots and lots and lots. When I say we, I mean the United States government. Government has sent out lots of money to people. And at some point, the money can't be worth as much as it was when there was less money out. Here's an interesting figure that I think probably will astound you. Sounds me anyway. The Federal Reserve every Thursday puts out a balance sheet. The Federal Reserve and they're complicated institutions, but they do put out this kind of consolidated statement of all the various Federal Reserve banks, all these things that have entered into legislation over the years, but there's a balance sheet. 15 years ago, roughly, the Federal Reserve issues those notes I talked about a while back. There's the current one, and they print these pieces of paper, and they, one way or another, they got it in the hands of people. Well, the interesting thing is, people said cash is dead and all that sort of thing, cashless society. Well, there were 800 billion, go back 10 or 15 years, there was about 800 billion of currency in circulation. And if you look at last Thursday's report, you'll see there's something like now $2.2 trillion of currency in circulation. 2.2 trillion. Now there's 330 million people in the United States. And with 330 million people, and you have almost 2.3 trillion of currency in circulation, that's $7,000 per person. Every man, woman, and child. While you're absorbing that, think for a moment, what would happen if the U.S. government said, well, they work it out in private, and they decide that they're going to send Federal Reserve, and decides they're going to send out $1 million to every household in the United States, and 130 million households in the United States or something like that, and they're going to mail tell you $1 million in cash. And there were a couple of provisions attached to it. One is, if you talked about it in the next 30 days, the money disappeared. So it was like in one of those old TV shows or something, and poof, disappears. And after 30 days, you could spend it. Well, all of a sudden, the household wealth of the United States, Federal Reserve puts out an estimate, 130 trillion or something like that. So basically, you've doubled the household wealth. All you've done is mail out people, but you don't tell them you're doing it with everybody. You just say they won the lottery or whatever it may be. Well, what's going to happen? Prices are going to go up. But are they going to go up immediately? Well, you don't know the other guy got it. You just know you got it. So you don't really feel like you got to rush out and buy things. But as soon as word gets around, it affects prices. It has to affect prices. You had 10 times as much. You went home and you found out 10 times the net worth you had yesterday, but everybody else, same thing. It doesn't increase the amount of bread in the economy or the number of cars. It just means that the price, the value of this is going to go down, and its purchasing power, you can't buy more than exists. So it's a very strange period where we had lots of money sent out to people, one way or another we're getting it, that they didn't find as many things to buy as before, and we had supply chain disruption. We have all these things happen. But the end of it is they go out to the Nebraska Furniture Mart and they start buying things. They don't wait for sales. When they walk in the store, they're going to walk out and they're going to have bought something, and they pay for it. They got the money. So we are seeing an unleashing of the fact that we've just mailed a lot of money to people. One way or another, it's very indirect, and it all gets complicated when we talk about a big system, but this is what's happened.
Well, no, that's good for us, actually. I mean, we're a net buyer of stocks over time, and just like being a net buyer of food, I expect to buy food the rest of my life, and I hope that food goes down in price tomorrow. So when stocks are down, we're going to be buying on balance, and who wouldn't rather buy it, at a lower price at a higher price? I mean, people are really strange on that. I mean, because most your listeners are savers, and that means they'll be net buyers, and they should want the stock market to go down. They should want to buy at a lower price. But they have that feeling that they just feel better when stocks are going up. If you worry about corrections, you shouldn't own stocks. I mean, if you can't take your stock going down, it's going to go down sometime if you own a stock, so why worry about it? I mean, the point is to buy something that you like at a price you like, and then hold it for 20 years. And you should not look at it day to day. If you bought a farm or apartment house, you wouldn't get a quote on it every day or every week or every month. So it's a terrible mistake to think of stocks as something that bob up and down, and you should pay attention to those bobs up and down.
You literally every day have thousands of the major American corporations offered to you at a price that changes daily. And you don't have to make any decisions. You have to make, nothing is forced upon you. So there are no called strikes in the business. The pitcher just stands there and throws balls at you. And if you're playing real baseball and it's between the knees and the shoulders, you either swing or you got a strike called on you. If you get too many called on you, you're out. In the securities business, you sit there and they throw U.S. Steel at 25 and they throw General Motors at 68, and you don't have to swing at any of them. They may be wonderful pitches to swing at, but if you don't know enough, you don't have to swing. And you can sit there and watch thousands of pitches, and finally you get one right there where you want it, something that you understand, and then you swing. And
so you might not swing for 6 months.
You might not swing for 2 years.
Isn't that boring?
It would bore most people, and certainly boredom is a problem with most professional money managers. If they try to sit out an inning or two, not only do they get somewhat antsy, but their clients start yelling, swing you bum.
Some people should not own stocks at all because they just get too upset with price fluctuations. If you're going to do dumb things because your stock goes down, you shouldn't own a stock at all. No, I mean,
what are dumb things? Selling a stock?
Yeah, selling a stock as it goes down. I mean, if you buy your house at $20,000 and somebody comes along next day and says, I'll pay you 15, you don't sell it because the quote's 15. You look at the house or whatever it may be. But some people are not actually emotionally or psychologically fit to own stocks. But I think more of them would be if you get educated on what you're really buying, which is part of a business. And the longer you hold stocks, the less risky they become. Whereas the longer the maturity of a bond, the more risky it becomes.